And then the frustrating thing is, not calling you out, but because I used to be part of this too, is that people will come forth to defend these people under the guise of free speech. And these people are just parasites. They don't actually care about free speech. They're just using it to sell lies. They go, yeah, free speech is important. And that's why blah, 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 blah. And then they just lie.
Destiny was a guest on conservative host Tom Bilyeu's show. They talked about a number of things for almost 2 hours. I wanted to focus on this one section in which they talk about freedom of speech, particularly freedom of speech when it comes to online pundits like Tim Pool or Joe Rogan. We're going to take a look at clips of this discussion between Destiny and Tom Bilyeu on his show. I will share my thoughts from time to time also. Let's get into this together.
I don't want anybody to get to decide what is true in a preemptive strike kind of way, where this speech is now not available because some people are not going to be able to parse through that data. And so for me, that's where I am prepared to live in a world where things very much do not go the way that I think that they should, because I am so terrified of people being able to say top down to protect you from dumb people, whatever. Of course, they're not going to say dumb, but to protect you, we're going to make sure that we get rid of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, because it ends up being bad. So, but it feels like while you agree with it at the extreme, you said there are heavy-handed things that you would want to do because misinformation could be potentially destroying our society.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's different than keeping people from voting, I would say, right?
Right.
Conceptually, it maps onto who identifies a dumb voter could be similar to who identifies misinformation potentially. But the issue right now is that the majority of the people in the United States of America that carry forward that really strict free speech banner do so maliciously. They do it as a cancer, and they sneak in as a parasite to pretend that freedom of speech is what they really want. But what they really want is just the ability to lie with impunity and to do it for huge sums of cash. And that is right now what is happening. It's not becoming a problem. It's not going to become a problem. It is a problem, and it has been a problem. And it's such that even if we were too heavy-handed in a media censorship environment, that would be preferable to where we are right now, because the area that we're at right now is deplorable. And there are too many people, the Candace Owens, the Tim Pools, the Joe Rogans, the Robert Malones, the Lex Friedmans, these people who are saying oh, we just want all these people to come and have conversations. They're not there to have conversations. They're there to lie with impunity. And that's why they can never back up any of the things they say. They have no accountability. They've got horrible track records. They're shown time and time again to be incorrect on a large number of things, but they'll point to one or two conspiracies that they happen to be correct about. And then they'll say, well, freedom of speech. It's like a guy who, it has the right to drive a car. He got his driver's license and he's been in 15 car accidents. He's like, well, I can drive. I have my license or whatever. Despite the fact that when your parents give you your first set of keys, hey, this is this might be a new privilege, but with it comes a lot of responsibility. And right now, everyone wants the privilege of freedom of speech with none of the responsibility of it, which is disgusting to me.
Okay, so walk me through what is the responsibility of free speech? What is the thing you have to do or whatever to earn? I don't want to put that word in your mouth.
Sure. I mean,
Before Destiny gets into how he thinks this would work, Destiny is absolutely correct, where you have these online pundits saying things that are not true, knowing that they're saying things that are not true just for large sums of money. So in the last, a couple of months ago, we had the scandal with Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, and others, where they were being paid money by the Russians, essentially, to a lot of it to promote anti-Ukraine sentiments in order, to them saying that we shouldn't be giving money to Ukraine to fight against the Russians. And they were being given, as he says, very large sums of money, $400,000 a month, to do 4 videos, $100,000 a week. Pretty good work if you can find it. And then that ultimately got shut down. How you deal with something like, if we're talking about the election and we say, these are the reasons that Donald Trump won, these are the reasons that Kamala Harris didn't win, you get into a lot of opinions there, obviously. There are multiple reasons for what happened or didn't happen with the election. So much of that, you're going to get into opinion. But what we're having so much with these right-wing pundits is, if you were having a conversation and it's raining outside, and you say, it's raining outside, that's a fact. There's rain falling. The sun isn't shining. And the other person says, no, you're wrong. The sun's out. The sun's shining. There's no rain. you're absolutely wrong. And then you say, we can walk outside, we can look out the window and see the rain falling. And they say, well, that's your opinion. I have my opinion, and I have my right to my opinion. How you deal with that, I don't really know. I mean, you can have, Destiny is going to talk about that we could have fact checkers. But if Destiny is debating Tim Pool and the sun, it's raining, and Tim Pool says, no, the sun's out, how do you deal with that exactly? You can have the fact checker say, yes, Destiny's correct, it is raining outside. But Tim Pool's still going to say, that's my view, and audience, you believe whatever you want. We also run into things where, and I've seen this online over and over again, Joe Biden makes a speech. Let's say he's on the White House lawn making a speech, and the right-wing conspiracy theorists say, oh, Joe Biden wasn't even there. He was in the basement. Or, they did this on a green screen, so he wasn't actually in that location. Or that wasn't even Joe Biden at all. That was an AI-generated person speaking as Joe Biden. Again, the fact checkers are going to say, no, the White House says that Joe Biden was there on the White House lawn. ABC News, NBC News says he was there. And the people are going to just say, I don't believe that. Again, how you deal with that, I don't know. And what's interesting to me is the people who believe these things and won't believe the media, they will pick and choose what they're going to believe. So, for example, if NBC News reports that Joe Biden made this speech, and they'll say, I don't believe NBC News. But then the next day will be, let's say the next day is the Super Bowl, which is broadcast on NBC. I don't know who's broadcasting the Super Bowl this year, but let's say it's NBC. And those people are going to say, Team X beat Team B. The conservatives will say that. And I've tried this before and it never works. But I've said to conservative people that I know, okay, yesterday you told me that the thing that NBC reported was fake with Joe Biden. They created that with AI. Today you're telling me that the Super Bowl that was broadcast on NBC, that Team X beat Team Y. How do you know that's real? Were you there at the Super Bowl? No. Okay, how do you know that game they didn't just computer generate the whole thing and it's all made up? How do you know any of those players are real people and not actors or AI generated? Have you met Patrick Mahomes or any of the other players? Well, no. Okay. How do you know, how do you choose this thing that's on this station that I think is lying propaganda is real, and this other thing on this station that's not real? We're in this, I think Destiny's thoughts here are good on this about trying to root out misinformation and present it as not true and give people facts. But I think that's going to be increasingly more and more difficult, and people are just going to believe whatever they believe. A majority of voters voted for Donald Trump, so apparently they believe his misinformation or think that it doesn't matter, which is sad, but what do we do?
If you are working in media, disseminating information to people, you should be putting in the bare minimum level of research or understanding into the topics that you are talking about. You cannot be repeating things uncritically that you find on social media that are just blatantly and obviously false. And if you are, there has to be some kind of accountability tracking for it.
Okay. And accountability tracking, like, would you propose that there's actually a score? Like, hey, you've misstepped this many times, but you got these things right, so your blended score is you're a B minus.
Sure, maybe something of that. But the problem with where we're at right now with the media environment is I'll say like on the conservative side, any type of scorekeeper or fact checker is inherently seen as biased. So that immediately fails with half the country.
Yeah, I mean, so skipping forward to see where we disagree, my thing will be anytime that you're going to put that sort of check on the system, you're saying somebody actually is able to view the world objectively correct and isn't caught in a frame of reference. So my view on the world is that quite literally nobody lives in an objectively true world. We are all doing our best to approximate the truth. And that is why there's always these gaps. Because I think while it is not impossible for humans to get to ground truth is physics, right? So once you understand a thing, it unlocks abilities, it unlocks GPS was unlocked because we got past Newtonian physics, which felt like it was an objectively true version of reality, only to find out that it's not. And now physicists are saying that even Einsteinian physics is not objectively true, that it's a good approximation. It's better. It gave us GPS, but it unlocked the power of the atom. But there's something beyond it that we don't yet understand. And so once I get to that and I say objective reality is the number of photons that are reflecting off of you and landing on my eye, it's a big math equation in the light spectrum. But I don't interface with the world like that. I interface basically like through a GUI, right? So I am already dealing with rules of thumb, approximation, narrative, all of that. And so for me, it becomes a question of, can anyone actually be trusted to say, you're the person that knows what is objectively true? And therefore, since you're uniquely, maybe not solely, but uniquely able to determine what is true, you can now give people a score or whatever and begin to shut down the people that get a low score. That's what scares me, that when it meets reality, it's just never going to hold up.
So here's my issue with this framing. I don't disagree with you conceptually. It doesn't have anything to do with the world that we live in right now. What we're doing is I've drawn a square in front of you, okay? And there might be two people who are intently looking at that square, okay, with no other congruent lines drawn on it. And I'm trying to argue whether I think it's a square or a rectangle, okay? Because one guy is saying, I think it might be a little bit longer, okay? And what you're saying is, I don't want somebody to come in and say, this answer is wrong, okay? But that's not the world that we have right now. Right now, we have that shape, and there are two people arguing whether it's a square or a rectangle, and then 5,000 other people are arguing that that is actually WWE wrestling, just the shape. And they're so clearly beyond outside of anything that would be even remotely. We're not talking about Newtonian physics versus general and special relativity. We're talking about believing in genes versus Lysenkoism, believing that bacterial, that's where we're at. You laugh, but it's absolutely the case that is where we're at. That I can be on stage now with conservatives who will lie with impunity about, say, January 6th, the cops let people in, and I'll chat, and I did this recently in the debate. I'll bet you $5,000 right now that the first person that broke into the building was a guy with a riot shield. It was Dominic Pizzola, I think, Proud Boy. He was arrested. It's all on video. And then they'll go quiet. When they don't say anything, that communicates to me that you know that you're lying. You know that you're up here telling a lie. And so many of these people do it, that they lie and they lie and they lie and they lie and they lie. And then the frustrating thing is, not calling you out, but because I used to be part of this too, is that people will come forth to defend these people under the guise of free speech. And these people are just parasites. They don't actually care about free speech. They're just using it to sell lies. They go, yeah, free speech is important. And that's why blah, 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 blah. And then they just lie. And it's like, this is a very frustrating environment to live in, because I agree conceptually again with your world that it is kind of scary to have somebody come in and say, well, should you be able to say this or that? Although we do to some extent. I can't go on TV and tell you to drink poison, right? I would get in trouble, right? But right now, the lies are so outlandish that it's destroyed. We live in different realities right now in the United States.
I agree with that. I think what I disagree with, I don't think that is because of the nature of people going out and wielding lies. I look at all of the facts laid out before me in terms of how to deal with the 2024 election. And I make the decision that, even though I hate that this is the decision, that I'm going to vote for Trump. You look at that and think, yo, what the fuck? Like, how can people, like, are their brains broken? And so the reason that I come to that, obviously it's multivariate and I can walk through it, but you can, if you go look at like all the January 6th stuff, for instance, I'm like, yeah, like there's nothing to argue. But I look at all of that and go, if you could show me that Trump was legitimately lying, that he knew that the election that he had lost fair and square, and he was still doing these things, does that completely discredit him? And so, yes, at that point, I would say if you had a mind reading device and you knew that, that would completely change my take on it, because I walk away from watching or hearing the calls of him literally on your stream, him doing the calls and everything. I walk away going, I think he actually believed it. Now, whether he's a fool or not to believe it is a totally different question. Whether he's completely delusional is a totally different question. But if you could show me into his heart, no, he for real is lying. Okay, cool. That changes my perspective. Now I would want you to point said mind reading device at all the fears that I have over on the left, because I want to know what's going on in their hearts as well. But I have a very definable thing that would allow me to change my mind. And so But I don't think for a second that you're WWEing any of this either. I think you really believe it's obvious that he's lying. How could anybody believe anything differently? So my thing is, given that the only heart I can see inside is my own, and I know that I'm not making it up, and I know that, and it'll be easy because I'm sure you'll push me on a lot of this stuff and you'll see which ways I'll break and go one way or the other. But I feel that good faith people of a certain level of intellect can look at that and walk away with different views, and I want them to. And when I look at putting hardcore controls in to make sure that we account for disinformation, that you make the world worse. Like, I'm way more terrified of that than I am it being more difficult for the public to think through what is true than I am the world where we're being told what is true.
Gotcha. I think that the thought process that you have right now in terms of people being able to reasonably disagree on that, I think is the end of this country probably. It's probably why I might be looking to leave after this election cycle. Because I think that people it's just so beyond the pale that we can have reasonable disagreements over whether or not the last president tried to lead a rebellion against the government to entrench himself in power. I don't know how we can have people that disagree on that and still function. Because who's to say the next deal isn't I need to murder political opponents, which he now has criminal immunity to do, or that I need to silence the media because, as he said multiple times, the media is the enemy of the people. Or if he comes into office and he does suspend the Constitution, as he said multiple times he would like to do, and he is a dictator on day one, which he's told Sean Hannity that he wants to be, right? Then at that point, like, I have nothing I can say because we don't misalign on values. It's just, I don't think we've even seen the same set of facts because
this is, so Tom Bilyeu, I think he has some points, but, he's talking about, he gets very far afield and into the weeds talking about physics and all of this and talking about, objective reality. Yes, when you get into some of these more complicated issues, you can have disagreements and look at things different ways. But like Destiny's saying, when we can't even agree on a set of facts, then what do you do? If you're having a conversation with somebody, you're having a debate, and let's say you're talking about the number of people who die in auto accidents every year. And it's like, what do we do? Are we going to reduce speed limits? Are we going to do more crash test standards, better seat belts, blah, 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 blah. So you say, I haven't looked up these numbers, so I'm just making this up, but 20,000 people die in auto accidents each year. What are we going to do about it? And my ideas are, X, Y, Z. And the other person says, I don't believe in cars. Cars don't exist. What do you do there? You are dealing with somebody who isn't living in reality. If they say cars are made up, you just made up cars, and so therefore, your numbers have no validity and all of that. And that's literally what's happening in our discourse between right and left. When, going to back to my example before of people saying, I've seen this many times online, Joe Biden wasn't actually physically at this appearance that the White House and the media claims that he was at. That was AI. That was done on a green screen or whatever. How do you then debate that person? We don't have an agreed upon set of facts. But if that other person is viewed as the person saying Joe Biden wasn't actually really there, that was a green screen or that was AI or whatever, if they're treated with the same validity as the person saying, okay, let's talk about Joe Biden's speech that he gave in California, right? And the other person says he was not in California. He was in his basement on a green screen. If those are treated with equal validity, which is much of what we've gotten throughout the Trump years, how do you deal with that? And like Destiny's saying, you almost have to just say, okay, I'm out. I'm not going to participate in this anymore because there are no facts anymore. There is no reality. And this kind of seems, I know this isn't exactly what this Tom Bilyeu is saying, but when he's saying, well, objective truths, that just kind of gets into, okay, it's your opinion, man. It's the Big Lebowski. Everything's just an opinion, but you have to respect my opinion. So what do we do? Let me know in the comments what you think. I don't have an answer to this. I don't know how exactly you deal with information because, as Destiny says, the people spreading the misinformation are not going to agree with the fact checkers. You know, they didn't agree with the fact checkers in the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump about multiple things. But like, for example, his claims that the Haitian immigrants were eating dogs and cats. And then the fact checkers fact check him, and there's no evidence from any authorities there that this happened, but still people continue to believe it. Donald Trump said, well, I heard about it on TV, and that was his fact check. How you deal with that, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what ideas that you have where we can have an agreed upon set of facts. There are fact checkers, but freedom of speech is still protected within that. What is the answer? Let me know what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. Channel's growing really quickly. I want to continue to grow, get to 50,000, 100,000 subscribers and beyond. So if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so. This is Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.